What did a teacher say or do to you that you've never forgotten? Write what you think about it. What did your teacher told you that you will remember forever? Waiting in the comments. Enjoy watching. Story 1. I took honors English 9th through 10th. I did poorly and failed 10th grade English. The teacher was one of those that thinks they have to give us way too much work to make sure we're ready for college. When it was clear I was going to fail, I gave up and planned to go to summer school and swap to advanced, easier English starting in 11th. The teacher caught wind and told me I would regret not taking her class seriously, and dropping honors English in favor of advanced English would limit my ability to attend college. She also implied I likely wouldn't be as successful as an adult due to the fallout. I wish I could go see her now and let her know I'm one of the most successful people in my graduating class. Story 2. Negative. Math teacher in 5th grade. I'd already gotten in trouble for being bored and drawing in class, and so when my pencil needed sharpening during her lecture, I was trying my damnedest to only sharpen in between her talking. She still yelled at me for trying to disrupt the lesson. My earliest example of even going out of your way to be good won't be enough for some people. Positive. Chemistry and biology teacher in training in 8th grade. Same teacher, glorious lady, arts magnet school. So a lot of us weren't going to be using this knowledge after the test at the end of the year, but some of us found it super interesting. She did 3 things that have stuck with me. Encouraged note sheets for tests to reference. I think these are typically called crib sheets. Allowed headphones during tests, which weren't abused because encouraged questions during tests. You'd raise your hand and ask if you were confused. She'd come over and out loud walk you through the steps to the answer so that you'd come up with the answer. And if you were listening, you'd hear when other students asked questions and be able to check your own steps as well. The students who wanted to take the test more seriously were the ones using headphones with music so they wouldn't hear and better test their own knowledge. End of the year testing by the state still went well, and I honestly think I did better on those tests than I would have, because mentally, when it came to testing, I associated the test space with hearing her talking through the problems rather than stressing out about where to start and what I didn't know. A couple years ago, I was at a bar that I frequented and was chatting with another regular patron about schools and brought up that teacher. The bartender joined in to say that the teacher was her mom. I told her that her mom was the greatest and I hoped she was doing well. She said she and her mom hear that a lot and she's still teaching. I hope her current students appreciate just how fantastic she is. Story 3. I had a teacher in 2nd grade who was the nicest man. He was extremely patient and never got mad. To them, it looks like you're super sensitive, or a psycho who is deeply overreacting. But from your standpoint, you were very nearly fed up, and that one marble was enough to tip you over the edge. So the trick is to recognize when you're carrying marbles in your mouth and release them early so they never have a chance to build up that much. And also to bear in mind that you never know how many marbles other people may be carrying. So it's always a good idea to apologize and be polite. It was advice that helped me immensely through my life, as I'm someone who is prone to explosive anger, and then almost instantly calm down and regret my actions. A hair trigger, as it were, but it's not a hair trigger. It's the culmination of hours or days or weeks or months or even years of little minor stressors that build up until something puts me over the top. I'm also very easily annoyed. Anyway, I found out that he was fired a couple years later after he blew up at a kid and threw a desk full of stuff against the wall so hard it destroyed the desk and sent pencils and books and whatnot flying like shrapnel around the room. Looking back, I wonder if he was dealing with anger management issues, and the marbles in your mouth analogy was something his therapist had taught him, and he was passing it on to us. Maybe as a way of reminding himself that these little shits don't know any better and aren't the cause of his problems. Just a bunch of marbles that get added. It was a shocking surprise to me because, as I said, he was the nicest guy who never even raised his voice or even cast an annoyed glance when I had him. Story 4. In my senior year in high school, I took an earth science class because I needed the credits and I knew it was an easy class. Around the end of the year, I asked my teacher if I could take the final exam a week early and skip the actual exam day. She warned me that I would only have 40 minutes to complete it instead of the usual 2 hours that we would normally get on exam week. And I said that was fine. Took it right then and there and got an A. It was a small thing, but I'm happy she let me do that. Story 5. 3rd year uni, I had my modern English exam. The results came in and I was 1 point away from an A. I went into my professor's office and asked her whether I could do anything to earn that damn point to get the mark. She then looked me right in the eyes and said that the genius kid in the class didn't get the full points, and I wasn't even close to him intellectually. In other words, I was the dumb one, and she didn't understand how I even got those points in the first place. I will never, ever forget those words, she said to me. And I truly do hope the evil witch will get what she deserves for all the torture she put me through for the rest of the year. Story 6, I mispronounced paper, and she screamed in my face about it in front of the whole class. For context, I have ADHD, undiagnosed at that particular point, but diagnosed later in the year. The girl sitting in front of me had the last name Papa. We were going down the rows going over that week's spelling list, and I followed the pattern to figure out that I would be asked to come to the board to write paper. I did this far enough in advance that my mind began to wander, and I noted to myself how paper and Papa were spelled with similar letters and almost sounded alike. Well, that was all it took. It got to my turn, and I walked up to the blackboard, wrote P-A-P-E-R, and proudly pronounced Papper, fusing the girl's last name with the spelling word. The teacher decided it was a good idea to berate me in front of the class for mispronouncing such an easy word, raising her voice as she went on, and yelled at me to sit back down. So third grade didn't turn out as terrible as it had set out to be. Story 7. He groomed me all year, then popped my cherry. The funny thing about it is that I've never felt like a victim. Back then, in high school, the 70s, it was almost seen as a badge of honor if a teacher was into you. There wasn't the same victimhood that existed today. Sure, I knew it was wrong what he was doing, but it was thrilling and exciting to have such a major secret to share with my peers, and that was something you definitely shared with your best friend. Mine was jealous because none of her teachers paid her the same attention. Today, people keep trying to convince me that I'm a poor victim of SA. I wasn't. I was a willing accomplice like many girls my age were back then. I'm not saying that there weren't victims of SA back in those days. We all knew of boyfriends that wouldn't take no for an answer. But the Lolita Club was a different experience. Story 8. My history teacher, senior year of high school. I was almost on the 5-year plan because of my own inability to grasp the work and actually do it. Anyway, I went to her after class one day and asked her if there was anything I could do to help my grade and not end up on the 5-year plan. She gave me plenty of makeup work and extra credit work that I would do with her during lunch. She set time aside. She gave me a chance when she didn't have to. She's the reason I graduated on time after I neglected my work. Fast forward to years later, I have her on Facebook, so I decided to finally ask her why she gave me a chance. She tells me, because you never gave up. It meant a lot to me. Story 9. I like her, but we had a rough time. Probably because she was a new teacher. I was 7, mind you. I was being talkative, and she made me stand up during class as punishment. When she asked me to stand up, she stared at me. I stared at her. I was like, what am I supposed to say? In my head. I asked her, what? And she told me to not talk back. After maybe 20 seconds of staring at each other. It happened quite a few times, 'cause, well, I talked too much. And she always gave that stare when she asked to stand. Story 10, I have 2 at both ends of the spectrum. Mrs. Edmonds, 1st and 3rd grade, was the first and only teacher until high school that straight up told me that it was okay to be curious and to ask questions and would absolutely let me read anything and everything that I could get my hands on. She was the only person that I hand-delivered a high school graduation invitation to, and I still see her out and about from time to time. And every single time we get a chance to catch up, she always says that she's so proud of me as a human being and that she was the fortunate aunt to have me as her student. She was there for me when I thought I had no one and was more like an additional parent to me. And there were times she was more of a mom than my own mom is. She's an absolute saint, and she's getting up there as far as age is concerned. And I will be a flat-out mess when she toddles off the coil. Story 11. Well, not a wholesome story, but I'll never forget how dumb my freshman year history teacher was. My teacher was this young blonde pretty lady. Pretty sure it was her first year teaching. I went to a primarily Spanish-speaking high school. When roll calling a student's name, they said aquí instead of here. The teacher was confused and said, "What does that mean?" And the whole class laughed at her because, well, high schoolers are mean. But instead of her just owning up to her minimal Spanish skills, she went on to say something along the lines of, "Well, this is America, and in America we speak English." Except that's not exactly true. This is a history class. You'd think she'd know that the United States doesn't have an official language, and in the state of California, English and Spanish are the state language. Still think about it to this day. Bless that woman's heart. Story 12. History teacher asked the whole class what he can do to increase our grade scores. There was a list of about 15 different things that we gave. One of them even said, actually read from the textbook, because they were normally just slideshows of the textbook. I remember another one read, don't make history questions incredibly specific on tests. There is a lot of information to remember. He wrote each of these on the whiteboard. This guy went through and crossed off each item saying, we do that, and not necessary for the class, etc. All of the items were crossed off. He said that blaming him for bad grades is horse shit. The complete lack of an attempt to understand somebody from their perspective to an entire classroom made me realize how important it is. Owning up to a mistake or even understanding someone's perspective and having a discussion will lead to a much stronger relationship with somebody or a large group. Story 13. Had a teacher who told us part of his curriculum was to take each student in the hallway and tell you exactly what he thought of you. He said if he doesn't like you, he's going to tell you and why. I was kind of a burnout in high school. All I cared about was my friends and partying. Grades were an afterthought. He basically told me don't be a fucking loser. He said he could see my potential and that I was smart, and I just had to apply myself. It really stuck with me, and I did eventually become not a loser. Story 14. A teacher told me you'll never graduate, give up. It pissed me off like you would not believe. After that day, I only had one goal: prove that dumbass wrong. I was fueled by pure hatred for that MF. After my first year at the university, I came back to see him with a huge speech prepared like, "Who's the loser now, dickhead?" Never had the chance to tell him more than 3 words. He laughed and told me, "I always knew you would make it. Some people need attention, support, or compliments to find motivation, but not you. You're the kind of people that only react to anxiety, anger, and adversity. I just gave you what you needed, someone to prove wrong." I called him dickhead and he answered, "Yeah, it takes one to know one. I knew because I'm like you, dumbass." I'm pretty sure I owe him, but I refuse to thank that MF. I'm still running on that hate sometimes. Story 15. I used to look alternative as a teenager, which made a lot of adults see me as weird or troubled. I was also really bad at maths. For some reason, my maths teacher always took it really personally and never missed a chance to make fun of and humiliate me in front of people, which added to my bullying problems. Story 16. First, a bad memory. English teacher in 7th grade made me cry in class. I was a painfully, horribly shy girl, and she decided she would work that out of me and made me stand up in front of the entire class and ask me questions about a reading. Still remember that and still strongly dislike her. Second, an amazing memory. Another English teacher in 10th grade saw how I was still quiet and a little shy and was affected by the class clown's teasing. He came up to me after school and said, "Hey, don't let them get to you. You're better than that." I'll never forget him and always try to remember that when I'm feeling some kind of way. 20 years later. Also bring egg sandwiches almost every day for lunch and would never go out to weigh with any of us. Story 17. A high school math teacher told me, "If you don't shut up, your friends are going to fail this class, and you'll end up digging ditches." She then kicked me out of the class. This occurred after I looked at my watch to see what time it was. We were taking a test that day, and I was supposed to leave 15 minutes early because I worked in the cafeteria during the lunch hour. During that particular day, I really was quiet and behaved. But to give her credit, I spent most days talking with my friends, so I'm sure she was staring at me the entire time just waiting for the slightest movement. The class was easy. I always finished my work and tests early, and I was getting an A in the class. I'm sure that pissed her off. Story 18. My 5th and 6th grade teacher disappeared after she had my class 2 years in a row. She chose to keep us for 2 years and petitioned the school board for it. She didn't want to let us down. She literally had a classroom full of abused children and didn't want us to feel abandoned more than we already did. She saw me come to school one day with visible bruises on my arms. I told her what was going on. She went to my house immediately. I walked out the back door of my house and my school playground, so she didn't even walk a block. She had another teacher watch us. I still don't know what happened, but when she came back, she said I wasn't going home that day. I went to my grandpa's and I stayed the weekend. And Monday morning social services was at school where I told them the truth. This didn't stop my abuse completely, but it did force my egg donor to choose her kids or her abusive husband, not our father. She chose us because we were her paycheck. I never lived that down, either that she isn't rich because I told the truth to social services. A few years down the line, I made the local newspaper in 10th grade for something. A week later, I got called to the principal's office. It was for mail that came to the school for me. A letter from no one else than Mrs. Heather Grant, my 5th and 6th grade teacher. She clipped the article and wrote about how incredibly proud she was of me for rising up and shining out. She said she knew she made the right choice in keeping our class for 2 years, and many of us made it further in life than we would have because of her. Mrs. Heather Grant, wherever you are in this world, know you seriously did give me a better chance. I am not successful like you had hoped, but I'm alive, and I've never been to jail. I have mad love for you to this day, and I pray you gotta have children of your own like you hoped for. Story 19. Middle school. I was 14. In English class, English is not my first language. We were working on I'm good at, I'm bad at, insert activity. The teacher was asking every student to find an example. Cue awkward, depressed, shy teenage me who could not, for the love of everything, find anything to say and ended up saying, I'm good at nothing, in the littlest voice possible. The teacher did a double take and said, No, I can't believe that. I'm sure if I spent 5 minutes talking to you, I would find many things you're good at. Please don't say that. 12 years later, I still can't find an example, but I will never forget this teacher who would simply not allow me to hate myself. Story 20. I had a teacher in 2nd grade, Mrs. Fishburne, who had a tattle box that she had us put our tattletale complaints into, like, Mrs. So-and-so farted next to me, or whatever other dumb complaints she got tired of hearing all day, every day. One day at lunch, I told my friend, I don't like Jasmine. She's always mean to me for no reason. That Friday, one of the tattles that was in the box was, I heard Greg the Pigeon say they don't like Jasmine, and I got talked to in front of the entire class about how mean it is to not like someone, and how would I feel if someone said they didn't like me. I was a decently smart kid and said something like, my mom said not everyone likes everyone, so it would be fine. The teacher doubled down and kept laying into me about what a mean, horrible thing I'd done. I also hate confrontation, and in my distress about being embarrassed in front of the class, I retorted with, I don't even like myself. I'm the biggest dork in the whole class, and I only have like 2 friends anyway. And then instead of being concerned that a 2nd grader had that kind of self-esteem, I instead got lectured even more about how bad I was for saying something about not liking Jasmine, and how I am now not allowed to participate in recess today. I still think back on that, and I don't think I did anything wrong, but social cues were and still are difficult for me, so maybe I was an ass. IDK. Story 21. All these positive stories and my instant thought was of Miss Thompson, the wretched bitch. In 4th grade, I wore cat ears to school every day because I was obsessed with cats. I was literally 9. My teacher was the favorite of just about every kid, whether they had her or not. I felt so lucky to be in her class. Fast forward 3 months, and she'd made my life a living hell. She bullied me using cats. Extra credit questions were, what animal do you get cat guts from? And what animal did I see run over today? Fucking psychotic questions. She once called me over to her desk to see a picture of a giant cat on the computer in a perceived act of kindness, then showed me a picture of a dead cat. She made another kid sit at a desk in the hallway with the door closed because she found her annoying, left her out of the Christmas gift exchange too, so I split my Play-Doh with her. Story 22. It was in middle school, and I wasn't necessarily the most social kid, so I wasn't very socially aware. I wasn't popular, but had 1 or 2 close friends. I had befriended the popular girl. Let's call her Jay. She was only really popular because she was good-looking, and her mom worked at the school as a lunch lady. I was very excited to be friends with someone as popular as she was, and I felt cool. However, I would then be pulled into the behavioral counselor's office for bullying, which I couldn't recall at all, mentions of violence inflicted upon my friends, and apparently 7 girls complained about me. The counselor wasn't very fond of me for whatever reason, and told me one of the girls complained about me splashing water on her, which I thought was just playful since she would do it to the popular girl and it was fine and playful. This was about a few days after my dad had a heart attack. So when the counselor claimed she had to call home, I freaked out. Luckily, he was okay. But the point where it was the height of my problems, I felt the urge to tell my principal about it, and lunch followed shortly. I was sitting at the lunch table with my friends when the lunch lady, Jay's mom, walked up to me and said, "Why do you think it's okay to talk to Jay like that?" And some show kindness thing. I was completely confused, but I couldn't stop crying because of how embarrassed I felt. She then proceeded to say, "I'm going to tell the principal about this behavior," to which I responded with, "I already did," still in tears, and I had to eat my lunch quietly with my friends not knowing what to say. I was humiliated in front of my friends, and I never cry in school. I actively avoid it, but I just couldn't. Screw you, lunch lady. Story 23. My 1st grade teacher would mock us in front of the class when we did badly. She said, "He did so badly, it's like he doesn't even know how to count." I remember that, and it still gives me math anxiety when I do more than arithmetic. I feel like those comments set me up for failure in math the rest of my academic career until I got to college. I had to take remedial math and had a few good teachers who took the time to walk me through. I took a math class for people with math anxiety. They didn't bother with mundane arithmetic. They showed us how to use all of the functions of our calculators. I remember I always struggled with fractions, adding and division and subtraction and multiplying fractions. Converting to decimal was easy. But then she said after teaching the lesson, and you'll never ever ever do that shit by hand again. Because we live in the 21st, look for the button on calculator that looks like this. Here's what it does. And oh my God, changed my life. I do math all the time. I work with mechanical ventilators, and oftentimes do calculations on the fly to help someone breathe. One time I shouted at a doctor, "It's 3 a.m. and you just asked me to do long division in my head while bagging a patient. I need a fucking minute, good times." That professor gave me so much confidence. In those situations, I pull out my phone and use the calculator, and am able to help my patients much quicker and more reliably. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.